God's grace and the compassion and decency of the American people is expressed through the men and women like Corpsman Burchard. It's expressed through the efforts of our armed forces, through the efforts of our entire government, through similar efforts from Spain and other countries around the world. It's also, as Secretary Clinton said, expressed through multiple faith-based efforts by evangelicals at World Relief, by the American Jewish World Service, by Hindu temples and mainline Protestants, Catholic relief services, African American churches, the United Sikhs, by Americans of every faith and no faith, uniting around a common purpose, a higher purpose. It's inspiring. This is what we do as Americans in times of trouble. We unite, recognizing that such crises call on all of us to act, recognizing that there but for the grace of God go I, recognizing that life's most sacred responsibility, one affirmed, as Hillary said, by all of the world's great religions, is to sacrifice something of ourselves for a person in need. Sadly, though, that spirit is too often absent when tackling the long-term, but no less profound issues facing our country and the world. Too often that spirit is missing without the spectacular tragedy, the 9/11 or the Katrina, the earthquake or the tsunami. They can shake us out of complacency. We become numb to the day-to-day crises, the slow-moving tragedies of children without food and men without shelter and families without health care. We become absorbed with our abstract arguments, our ideological disputes, our contests for power. And in this Tower of Babel, we lose the sound of God's voice. Now, for those of us here in Washington, let's acknowledge that democracy has always been messy. Let's not be overly nostalgic. Divisions are hardly new in this country. Arguments about the proper role of government, the relationship between liberty and equality, our obligations to our fellow citizens, these things have been with us since our founding. And I'm profoundly mindful that a loyal opposition, the vigorous back and forth, the skepticism of power, all of that is what makes our democracy work. And we've seen actually some improvement in some circumstances. We haven't seen any canings on the floor of the Senate anytime recently. So we shouldn't over-romanticize the past. But there is a sense that something is different now, that something's broken, that those of us in Washington are not serving the people as well as we should. At times it seems like we're unable to listen to one another, to have at once a serious and civil debate. And this erosion of civility in the public square sows division and distrust among our citizens. It poisons the well of public opinion. It leaves each side little room to negotiate with the other. It makes politics an all-or-nothing sport where one side is either always right or always wrong, when in reality neither side has a monopoly on truth. And then we lose sight of the children without food, and the men without shelter, and the families without health care. Empowered by faith, consistently, prayerfully, we need to find our way back to civility. And that begins with stepping out of our comfort zones in an effort to bridge divisions. We see that in many conservative pastors who are helping lead the way to fix our broken immigration system. It's not what would be expected from them, and yet they recognize in those immigrant families the face of God. We see that in the evangelical leaders who are rallying their congregations to protect our planet. We see it in the increasing recognition among progressives that government can't solve all of our problems. And they're talking about values like responsible fatherhood and healthy marriage are integral to any anti-poverty agenda. Stretching out of our dogmas, our prescribed roles along the political spectrum, that can help us regain a sense of civility. Civility also requires relearning how to disagree without being disagreeable. Understanding, as President said, that civility is not a sign of weakness. Now, I am the first to confess I'm not always right. Michelle will testify to that. But surely you can question my policies without questioning my faith. Or, for that matter, my citizenship. Challenging each other's ideas can renew our democracy, but when we challenge each other's motives, it becomes harder to see what we hold in common. We forget that we share, at some deep level, the same dreams, even when we don't share the same plans on how to fulfill them.